very hard to compare it to the minimum wage in the United States for several reasons. One of them is that the social safety net is so much more thicker that even people who are unemployed and poor still benefit from, in different European countries, there's still full access, for example, to the health system and the like. So if we were to convert into dollars, the SMIC, it might sound lower than it probably reasonably should be viewed. Now you have similar debates there that those type of unemployment payments can cut across work, the incentive to work, but these are real old arguments. In the US, they've really been destroyed, that people would rather receive unemployment benefits than work. Before Clinton got hold of the welfare system and cut it to shreds, the state that paid the highest welfare payments in the United States over a year time would be under the poverty line. So it's not too different in France. The SMIC is quite low. It's quite low.
Yes, thank you for your talk. I wonder if you could talk about the emergence of a permanent underclass in both France and the United States. Groups who are not only unemployed, but who are first, second, third generation unemployed.
I'm not really sure if you have. Part of the conservative critique of the welfare system in the United States is that you've had generations of welfare recipients, people who have lost the culture to work because they never had it, because they were born into families who spend their welfare checks drinking cheap alcohol on their porch. But real research shows that there's very, very few people who have been unemployed for a long, long period. People tend to go in and out of unemployment depending on local labor market circumstances, as well as their own personal lives and their health and things like that. So there isn't really, in that sense, a permanent underclass of unemployed people for generations. It really, there's very, very few people who have been, for example, in the United States, on unemployment for over 5 years in a row. It simply happens. People go in and out. I'm not really sure exactly how to answer this question, but it's a very important one, because are the real poor the most exploited, poorest part of the working class? Or are they people who have been so exploited, so left behind, that they're really not part of a class at all? That's a real classic question. Part of it is a question of ideology and terminology, and it's also a question for good, hard research. But this notion of exclusion in France, really, there may be really a movement towards a permanent underclass of structurally unemployed people with little access to social services, as the Sarkozys and other governments, including the socialist government in Greece, cut back on these things.
Listen, what you all were saying here, the definition of poverty, according to the U.S. government, is that if your income is below a certain level, you're considered to be a poor person, so that you're below the poverty line. Now, most of the people who are below the poverty line actually work; they have jobs. Right. But there are a lot of jobs, such as, for example, being, most jobs waitressing, for example, or being a clerk at Walmart, which pay so little that you're just below the poverty line. Working in and of itself does not get you out of poverty. Okay, being poor doesn't mean most of the poor people work. Only a minority of them are unemployed. The other thing, and now most of these jobs don't last very long. You work a while, and then you lose your job, and then you're unemployed for a while, and you have to go on unemployment if you're eligible for it, and then you get another job, and then you go off the unemployment, and you're working again for a while, and then you lose that job, and you go back on unemployment. And then you do that, and then your kids do the same, and then your kids do the same thing, and then if you have kids, and then their kids do the same thing, and on it goes. That's what it is like for most poor people in the United States. I don't know how many people have ever lived that way before. I live that way myself right now, this moment, and that's just how it is. But that's pretty much how it is for most poor people in the United States. And by the way, there's also a tendency in the United States to to equate, to use, especially among white people who are middle class or above, even when they're leftists, to treat the term poor and black as synonyms. I mean, we know that's not so in France. It's in Europe, right? There's not very many black people there. But you know, if you look at the statistics, most of the people who are below the poverty line in the United States are white, not black or Hispanic. So there's a lot of misconceptions here. And by the way, most of black people in the United States now actually have an income that puts them above the poverty line, about 2/3, if I remember correctly.
Do you have a question?
Well, my question, not really.
I agree.
Well, I did kind of have one question that I wanted to ask. Now, you know what? I wanted to. Maybe you answered this already. You were talking about the. The French government paying informers to attend union or left-wing meetings and then writing reports on them. And I was just wondering. Maybe you answered this already. I mean, are they still doing that? And if not, when did they stop and why?
Well, I'll tell you in 50 years, because that's how long the records are sealed.
Oh,
So-
you mean if they do it now, it's secret,
Right.
and they're not going to reveal that.
That's
but
right.
there's you mentioned something in passing about you're saying that maybe they're doing it more with the anarchist groups now than they are with the more mainstream unions, and including the use of agents provocateurs.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right, but this is unconfirmed. Is this an unconfirmed rumor, or has this been verified already?
Well, what I've noticed over the last few years is that whenever there's a demonstration, the Minister of the Interior and the right-wing governments, in fact, Sarkozy was one of them in a previous government a few years ago.
Yeah.
They claim to possess information that they have that casseurs, which means breakers, literally breakers, are going to accompany the demonstration, and they're going to break windows and damage property and assault people.
So Sarkozy announced publicly that he was going to use agents provocateurs.
No. Well, he says that's where he got the information. He doesn't say that he used agent provocateur, but that's where they must have had that's where he claims that they have inside information from informants that this is going to take place.
Oh.
And therefore, it already criminalizes the whole demonstration and the whole action, doesn't it?
Oh, I see. Okay, that's interesting.
And I agree with everything you said about work and unemployment and the like. That's absolutely, and the racist dimension of it as well. That's right.
With no further questions, Keith, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so